Right. Any more? Perfect. So, a little bit about me. So I'm a senior careers advisor at Dukes Plus. I graduated from Harvard in 2021 with a degree in architecture and a minor in psychology and French. I work a lot with our school partners to help schools understand how they can support their students via A-list. And Aayzah, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Of course. So I'm Aayzah. I'm a senior advisor at A-List, and I work directly in schools with students to advise them and help them prepare their applications. A little bit about my academic background. I majored in psychology and history at Bryn Mawr College, which is a women's college in consortium with the University of Pennsylvania, Swarthmore College, and Haverford College. And I did my master's at NYU, where I also took a bunch of classes at Columbia. So I really bring this multidisciplinary and multi-institutional experience to my advising. I would also like to note that my entire education was on complete scholarships and financial aid. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm always happy to answer.
Thank you, Aayzah. So today we will be covering a few topics. We will first talk about the importance of preparing a good list. And then we will introduce the concept of a long list. We will talk about how to start adding some universities on your long list. And then we will talk about taking off some of those universities off your long list to have a more concentrated, more suitable shortlist. Also, throughout the presentation, we will be looking at a case study of a student called Gabriella. We will be introducing different aspects of her application, and then through this application, we will introduce you to how the student is making decisions based on their profile and also which universities that, she ends up with. And then at the end, we will have some time for a Q&A session. Perfect. So the importance of a good university list. Of course, this sounds very self-explanatory. You need to have a good university list so that you end up going to a university that is a good fit for you. But the importance of a good university list actually starts much before your satisfaction from the university that you're attending. So, first of all, the US is a very popular destination internationally, but also it is a huge education market for domestic applicants as well. It's a big country. Just last year alone, there were around 1.5 million Common App applications submitted by over 10 million students. So this means around 7 applications per student. Mind you that the Common App is not the only website where you can submit applications. So this means that students are submitting on average at least 7 applications and more through the other websites that they're allowed to submit applications from. This is increasing year on year. The implication of this is that if you fire off random applications, you are probably entering crowded pools, and you're also creating extra work for yourself without necessarily getting a lot back in return. So it is important to make good choices, good university choices, so that your applications yield results for you. And also, selectivity is extremely uneven. As you can expect from any country, there are universities that are easier to get into, and there are some other universities that are more difficult to get into. So when we look at the average acceptance rate in the US, that is around 73%. But then when we look at the top tier universities, the acceptance rate is under 5% or under 10% for the likes of Harvard and Princeton and many other universities. What this means is that when you look at countries like the UK or the Netherlands, the most selective universities will rarely have acceptance rates less than 10%. But in the US, we are seeing universities are a lot more selective. So you can choose right universities and increase your chances by actually being a better fit for these universities. Also, early plans, being able to make these decisions earlier on, actually might have an implication on your chance of getting in simply because of the application route that you're choosing. So, um, I know that some of our year 13 students and families here already know about the concept of early decision and action. But for those who might be newer to the process, early decision and action refer to submitting your application before the often official January 1st deadline to basically indicate to the universities that you are really interested in them and you are their first choice. Sorry, and they're your first choice. So early decision. Not every university offers this, but around 25% of the universities offer early decision. But when we look at the most selective ones, around 55%, 50% of them offer this, meaning they create an opportunity for you to apply early. The first early decision deadline is already behind us. It was November 1st for most universities, but the reason why this is relevant today is because some universities have a second early decision deadline that is late December or even the same deadline as the regular decision deadline. So you still have the chance to indicate this extra interest to universities by choosing them right now. Um, when you look at universities that offer early decision, the acceptance rate averages 61% compared to the 50% overall rate. So um, this is a major lever on your outcomes. We will be looking at some stats about this later on, but you can actually apply to a university early decision number two and basically be considered before other students by that university. Time and mental energy are finite. There are a lot of universities in the US. One would want that, you can apply to as many universities as you want to maximize your chances, but it's not as easy as just choosing the university name and then submitting your application. They ask you multiple short essays, they ask you detailed questions. Every application will have some variables in it. So every subsequent school that you choose requires you to put in extra work. So overbuilding your list means that you're spreading the same limited time across perhaps too many low quality essays or universities that you're not really serious about. And that can hurt your admit chances and maybe take away the time that you could spend perfecting this one application for a university that you know you're interested in. And then finally, money is on the line with the US. The education and tuition is not cheap in American universities. And highly selective private universities often only offer need-based aid, while many less selective private universities and public flagships also have generous merit scholarships. So you have some different financial aid options if that's relevant to you. If you only apply to need-only schools, you might end up with great admits but no affordable options. So it is also important to choose your schools wisely, knowing their financial aid implications so that you maximize your chances of not only getting in, but also being able to afford the options that you're getting into. So, how to prepare your long list? The concept of a long list is what you might assume. It is basically adding in as many universities as you want that you think you're interested in before you go through the process of eliminating them. We all start with the long list process, especially around year 11. Students get really excited about the universities that they have heard about, perhaps from social media, from popular culture, or from their peers. And then they will start forming some names in their minds, such as Princeton or Bates, that they want to apply to. The long list does not necessarily have to require you to do a lot of research about the universities. It is more about choosing the ones that you think you're interested in before you go through the process of elimination. So with the long list, there are two different strategies because in the UK, with students who are applying to the US, we tend to see two big clusters of students with different priorities. The first cluster that we see is students are prioritizing their UK applications and only apply to US universities if they think the school that they get into can be a better option to the ones that they think they can get into in the UK. So these students are, often the ones who are aiming for the top Russell Group choices, Oxbridge Imperial. So they only want to go to a university in the US, perhaps make that financial commitment if it's actually something that is worth doing. So in this strategy A, the first step is to lock in your UK benchmarks. You need to be really sure about your realistic chances of what you might do in the UCAS process, and then go from there. So decide on the course that you want to study in the UK, build a UCAS list with a few aspirational choices, several realistic options, and at least one insurance option that you would attend, which is the process that you would go through anyway. And then start translating those options into US academic targets. So especially the aspirational choices that you have and the realistic choices you have. Go and look at the US universities list and then see which ones might have similar levels of difficulty of getting in and also fit. So Oxbridge and top London universities like Imperial and UCL, tend to be in the same, let's say, difficulty range as the super selective US private schools and top public ones. And strong Russell group usually correlates to mid to highly selective US options. After you do this comparison, then choose US schools that match or beat your UK options. So look at the strength in the subject, maybe if it's financially realistic for you, if it offers any clear added value, such as co-ops, labs, location. If you think it would, if you wouldn't choose it over a good UK offer, um, then don't apply. At the end of the day, you do already have your UK options there. And with the last step, make sure that the major is already offered. Look at the GPA testing stats to make sure that your odds are actually within the range. And then make sure that the deadlines work with UCAS, the exams, and your time. Now, looking at the other strategy, these are students who have the US as their primary option and then other universities to support that. This was the case that I was in. I applied as an international student myself, but I actually was not planning to apply to any universities in my home country. It was mainly the US and a few Canadian and Italian universities on the side. So with this, we usually recommend students to apply to roughly 10 to 14 US universities if this is the route that they're taking. Some students will do less, some students will do more, but 10 to 14 we see is very much a median number. In this 10 to 14 universities, you need to choose 3 to 4 universities that are reach. So reach universities are the ones that are aspirational for you, universities that you really would like to go to. When you look at your profile objectively, you see that there might be some issues about your fit or whether you would be, um, let's say, your stats, your GPA or your SAT might be good enough for this university, but you still want to shoot your shot. 4 to 6, which is the biggest cluster here, should be your match or target universities. These are universities that you think are a match for your academic preparedness and your profile, and you have a good chance of getting in. And then 3 to 4 universities are safety, so universities that you really think that you would be able to get into. This is the insurance option in the UCAS. Universities that you want to apply to so that you make sure that you have a few acceptances ready at the end of this process. Then after this, again, check the data and availability. As usual, check if the deadlines work with the UCAS, if the major is already offered, etc. So, case study. I am going to introduce you guys to Gabriella. This is a student we have worked with in the past, although we have changed the name for anonymity. I will tell you a little bit about Gabriella, and then Aayzah here, as our advisor who's working with students on a daily basis, will tell you what she thinks about a student with such profile that comes to her, officers, let's say, and then also what she thinks is the realistic chances of this student. So Gabriella is a year 13 student. She attends an independent girls' day school in London, and she wants to study psychology. Her extracurriculars and her supercurriculars include editor-in-chief of her school's newspaper, and Gabriella also created a psychology column in her school newspaper as an author as well. She tutors younger years. She has the work experience of working with the NHS mental health services. She teaches English to immigrants to the UK. She has attended a UCL summer psychology course, and she is also a county level swimmer. So she, of course, has already done her GCSEs, and she has 2 9s, 6 8s, and then 2 7s. Her 9s are in psychology and history, and her 7s are in mathematics and physics. And the remaining subjects are all 8s. Her A-level predictions are she is expecting an A star in psychology, an A in maths, and an A in history, and then currently her French is on the A to B borderline. But she is doing a fourth A-level that she did not have to do. All right, so I am going to pause here and I'm going to ask Aayzah. So what do you think about Gabriella?
Thanks, Umut. So Gabriella is a strong student. Just looking at her academic profile, it's pretty good, but it's obviously not perfect. And I can also see that she's not taking like any standardized tests. So there's no SAT score or ACT score. So she's probably going to apply test optional, which reduces her chances a little bit. In terms of where she goes to school, I would also just like to mention that that is something that students do not think about, but it is important. So let's say she goes to an independent girls' day school in London, she will have to see like what are other students doing at school? Like what are their grades like, right? So like if the average student at her school is taking four A levels, then maybe the fourth A level does not really give her much of a benefit, right? And if most of the students have like similar GCSE profiles, then like US universities will consider the school context and they will place her within that context. Let's say if she goes to a school where she is doing above and beyond, where not that many students are going to have the work experience that she has, then she will be a much better candidate. So right now, what she needs to do is to actually just frame her strengths as best as she can, and then make a list that is respectful of the fact that she does not have a standardized test score. So she should definitely look at the UCs. For women, I also always recommend them to look at women's colleges because, especially coming from like a girls' day school, I think that could not only be a good fit, but that could also give her a leg up because women's colleges like Barnard, for example, or Bryn Mawr, Smith, Mount Holyoke, like they do not get as many applicants, and the people that end up applying are people who are already good enough fits. So then the likelihood of getting in is a bit higher.
Thank you, Isa. I actually have to add one more detail because I realized this slide has been cut. Gabriela has taken standardized tests. It is
Okay.
790 in mathematics and 720 in English. So just adding those details as well, how would that change your analysis?
Okay, my math is bad. So
So
seven,
that is a 1510 she has.
15th then. Okay. Well, that gives her a bit of a boost. So that's good because as you can see that in her GCSEs, she had a 7 in math. And for a lot of schools, like they want to see that you are good in like your core subjects. So they really value math, even if you're applying for a psychology degree or even a humanities degree. So that like good SAT score will definitely help her and it will broaden her options by a lot. So something to keep in mind also is if a school says they're test optional, they're not really test optional in this day and age. A lot of the competitive schools have so many students applying that there's going to be plenty of applicants who are going the whole 9 yards and applying with like all perfect academics, all these extracurriculars, as well as like a good test score. So that will definitely give her a boost. Um, but I will say that she is gonna have to be a bit realistic in the sense that her sevens are probably gonna rule out like maybe like the Ivy Leagues that she might think about. A lot of them also like want SAT above 1550. So I think that she can definitely shoot her shot like in the top 10, but like that will still be a reach as it is a reach for anyone. Um, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so what I'm hearing is Gabriela shows a lot of promise, but it's not necessarily a profile that we think is, immediately going for Ivy Leagues and the top schools. But she does have a shot at some good options.
Mhm.
So this is the long list that Gabriela had. It has 21 universities. So these universities are ones that she has identified as, initially appearing to be good choices. So we have four UC universities here: UCLA, UC San Diego, Berkeley, and then Santa Barbara. We have Santa Clara. We have a liberal arts college called Colby, Loyola Marymount. We see a few Boston universities: Boston College, Boston University, Tufts, and also Wellesley. In the New York area, we are seeing Columbia and Barnard, and perhaps also in New Jersey, Rutgers. We have Bates as a liberal arts university. We have Pepperdine, Southern Methodists, Wesleyan, Northeastern, George Washington, and American. So a mixed bag. They are coming from all sorts of geographical backgrounds. They're coming from different competitiveness levels. So we will now be looking at how to narrow down this long list into a short list so that Gabriela does not submit 21 applications, because that is a lot of work. So, how to narrow down your long list? The US has more than 4,300 institutions. I would say around 1,000 of them have been, accepting international students historically and are realistic options for students. So, there are multiple factors that you can consider to find universities that are a better fit for you. The first one is location. So location is not only it's not only where you'll study, but it's also where you will live. So location can take different forms. It can be the region and the coast. The US is a big country. You will have Northeast with more concentrated cities. You might have the Midwest, which is a much more broad environment. There's a South, the West Coast, Pacific Northwest. So region-wise, this might be relevant to you. The university's location can be in an urban, suburban, or a rural setting. So this has an implication on your um, daily experience because at the end of the day, do you want to be in a city or do you want to be in a campus that is close to a city or do you want to be in an environment where the campus is the center of life and it is pretty much where students are focusing on? Climate is important. Some cities, especially in the Midwest and the Northeast, will have severe winters. Some students are not very interested in this. On the other hand, some students actually really like this because they might be skiing or they might even be thinking about joining their school ski team. Heat and humidity is an option. A lot of our students from the UK tell us that they want to live in a warm and sunny place for a change, so they really like to add some Southern and Californian universities. So that might be a priority for you. Proximity to opportunities is important. Depending on which city that you're in, you might have access to politics and government opportunities or exposure to these fields. Finance, tech, startups, healthcare, and also outdoors. And then final distance from home, students are closer to the UK on the East Coast compared to the West Coast. And if students and families are thinking about making frequent trips, the East Coast tends to be a more preferred region. So some examples are uh, in these ranges. The East Coast has big cities that are very close to each other. New York City, for example, is really big on finance, media, and the arts. And NYU is a university that can cater to this. Boston is a big higher education hub where there are a lot of universities, but also it is America's biotech and healthcare capital. So Boston University or other universities in the Boston area might be a good fit for you. There are college towns in the UK, and when we talk about college towns, we are not talking about a little village with a small university attached. We are talking about, universities with tens of thousands of students who are basically the flesh and blood of that city. So, University of Michigan is located in Ann Arbor, which is in the Midwest. It's a big college town, strong sports and research culture. You have University of Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and Chapel Hill is actually close to many other universities in the area, such as Duke. And it is this area called Research Triangle where students have access to amazing research opportunities and opportunity to work with students from other universities. In the West Coast, we have the Tech Corridor, which is in the Bay Area. So Stanford and UC Berkeley, this is where you will have access to a lot of tech companies, startups, venture capital. University of Washington is in Seattle, which is where a lot of other big companies are headquartered, such as, I believe, Microsoft and Amazon, but also big outdoors culture. And then proximity to opportunities, Dartmouth is in rural Hampshire, big outdoor culture. It's a very tight-knit community. Similar with Williams, it's in rural Massachusetts. It's a small liberal arts college with a very strong academical culture. So location can influence your daily experience quite a lot. The next option is course offerings and academic structure. So you can look at how specialized or broad is the degree. You might want to study mechanical engineering, but within mechanical engineering, there might be a lot of different subfields, and some universities will simply give the opportunity to students to study mechanical engineering, while some others might, specify that as aerospace engineering or other stuff. You can look at how easy it is to double major, add a minor, change your major, but also how can you study across schools? So if you want to, let's say, go to University of Pennsylvania, you might also have opportunities to take classes from the business school there, which is very renowned. And also, are there any distinctive programs that are relevant to what you're expecting from your education? So these are co-op programs, combined bachelor's and master's options, and interdisciplinary colleges, joint degrees. So what you want to study might come in really different forms. Some examples to this are Brown and Amherst have very open and flexible curricula. This is where the university has some requirements based on graduating your course, but after that, you are very much designing your own education based on the subjects that you want to explore, based on the research topics that you're interested in, and what you want to learn. Many universities have a structured general education curriculum, or sometimes this is called a core curriculum. Columbia and U Chicago are two that are really famous for this system because they have really structured core curricula with dedicated classes to their core education. So a course that you might be taking, from your required courses might not actually count towards your core curriculum because they have specific subject requirements there. But they also allow students to get a really well-rounded education. Some universities are highly specialized in STEM. So MIT, Caltech, Georgia Tech, all three of these universities have technology in their names. This is because they are known for their STEM-focused majors. When you go to Caltech, you actually will not find any major or any course other than STEM. While at Georgia Tech and MIT, you will find some courses that are not STEM-based. But if you are someone who wants to have access to, say, courses from many disciplines or have the flexibility to perhaps change your course after you explore the sciences, these universities will not be a great fit for you because they will not have many alternatives for you to explore. Some universities have professional or co-op oriented opportunities off the bat, so they will be very career oriented as you are studying. In fact, they will be filling your resume and your CV before you graduate. Northeastern and Drexel have really strong co-op models where you spend at least a semester of your education just working, 4 days of the week or 5 days of the week, and doing that as an academic requirement. And finally, some schools are specialized, often in creative fields. Um, but these include the RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design, the Berklee College of Music. So this is where you are getting a much more specialized education in arts or music, but also opportunities that are very relevant to the education of these fields, such as university concerts or showcases or exhibitions. So next factor is the teaching type and the learning style. Um, Universities have different sizes, and this usually has an implication on how the daily experience is in the classroom. So you might want to look at the typical class size, especially in years 1 and 2, because students tend to be in smaller classrooms once they get to final years of their education, but earlier on, they tend to be in more amphitheaters and more lecture style classes. So look at the balance of lectures, seminars, labs, studios, look at access to faculty and research. One statistic that you can look at is actually the student to faculty ratio. So universities will show you how many students each professor basically correlates to in terms of the averages. And also the amount of hands-on and experiential learning. So universities, especially public universities, such as UCLA, UT Austin, University of Florida, they have really big first-year lectures, and then seminars are introduced more at upper levels. These universities are really good, but if you are someone who really values the one-on-one exposure and the smaller classroom settings, they might not be a good fit for you. Um, On the other hand, liberal arts universities, especially, such as William Swarthmore Pomona, have seminar-driven teaching much early on. They put an emphasis on discussion, writing, close faculty contact. Students also often get research opportunities much earlier on at these universities. Um, Universities such as Johns Hopkins, UC San Diego, Carnegie Mellon, they have a very lab and research intensive culture, especially if you're studying the STEM fields. And again, with specialized universities in music and the arts, studio-based and critique-based learning becomes the core of the education. So this is one thing that families think about a lot, of course, which is scholarship availability and the cost fit. You need to be looking at the different kinds of aid that's available, so need-based versus merit-based. There's automatic merit versus competitive merit. They might be separate applications even. For public universities, in-state and out-of-state students will get different tuitions. For international students, it's always out-of-state, but some students will have US citizenship and they might actually get in-state pricing based on where they're actually from. And then the total cost of attendance, because it's not only tuition, with housing, room and board, health insurance, and travel, these fees really add up. So what you see on the right side is actually the cost of attendance for Columbia University for last year, and 71,000 was the tuition and the fees. But on top of that, another 22,000 was the housing, food, student fees, books, personal expenses, flights. And again, this number is inclusive of everything and does not have any financial aid added on top of it. And many universities, especially large and wealthy universities such as Columbia, will have some financial aid available for students. But 93K is where we're starting off before we make any deductions. So with scholarship availability, some universities are heavy need-based and they have little to no merit-based scholarship. These are mainly universities where getting in is a merit of its own. So there isn't really much more merit to show because they're very selective. So Ivy League universities, many top US private universities tend to be in this category. They are really good for low and middle income families because these universities have really big resources who qualify for need. Um, there are very big merit and scholarship environments. So this is University of Alabama, Arizona State, University of South Carolina. These are usually awarding scholarships to very strong academics, especially because these are not the top tier universities, but they are still very good universities. So this is their way of attracting really bright students to their campuses. We have selective privates with targeted merit, University of Southern California, Tulane, BU American University, but I would also add a lot of liberal arts universities, smaller liberal arts universities here, because these universities do give scholarships both based on need, but also merit. So they will be looking at the student's profile very holistically, and they will be really good opportunities for international students who might want to get some extra consideration from these universities. And then some universities, especially the public ones, such as University of California, for example, they have very little aid, especially for international students, but they actually have a lower list price because they are public universities. So these might be a good choice for you because their tuition tends to be, I would say, $20,000 lower, at least, if not more. So it actually brings down the cost of university significantly. So next factor, I know we are looking at a lot of things, but we do need to be considering all of these things simultaneously to make a decision. So campus type and community size is important. Small liberal arts universities, especially, or also some research universities will have very low number of undergrads versus some, 3 to 10K, and then public universities such as, let's say, UC Berkeley will have more than 10,000 undergraduates. The residential field is important. Some are campus-based and residential, where most students live on campus. Meanwhile, some others are more commuter based or embedded in a city. The culture is important. So some campuses are sports heavy, arts heavy, politically active, religious affiliation might be a thing. Um, and then finally, student body mix. International students are well represented in the top universities, but there are also really good universities that are not, that don't have the brand recognition of, say, Yale, that are still very good, but might not have as many international students. But also percentage of postgraduates is important. Some universities primarily cater to undergraduates, and some others, especially research universities, will actually have undergraduates in the minority. And just looking at diversity in general. So we have small residential liberal arts colleges such as Amherst, Williams, Smith, Carleton, very intimate campuses, high contact, often rural and small town. We have medium-sized private research universities. They include Tufts, Georgetown, Rice. Campus feels strong undergraduate focus, but there are grad students and professional schools at the same time. There are very large public flagship universities, Ohio State, Penn State, University of Wisconsin-Madison, more than 30,000 undergraduates, big sports, many sub-communities. Some universities are very urban. So City University of New York, some branches of the California State or University of Texas. These universities often feel like, students have their own lives and then also come and study. More students live off campus. There is a mix of ages and different backgrounds. And then some universities will have religious affiliation. What this means is not that you do have to fit that religious affiliation. There are many universities in the US that might have a Catholic or Jesuit affiliation that just informs the university's, let's say, ethos and how they have been founded. Um, but you don't necessarily have to, fit the glove that way. So Notre Dame, Brigham Young, Baylor. There are also historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, so Howard, Spelman, Morehouse. And then I believe this is the last one, the competition and the admission odds. So the overall acceptance rate gives us a good idea of how difficult it might be to get into a certain university, but it is often a misleading number because for your major, the competition might be higher. One example that I can immediately think of is Carnegie Mellon, which is already a very selective university. I think their acceptance rate is around 12, maybe 14%. But they also have a top three computer science department, the acceptance rate for which is actually more difficult than getting into many of the Ivy League universities that you're hearing about. Similar with Cornell. I mean, Cornell is already a very selective university. I think they have a 10% acceptance rate. Their architecture department's less than 3% because it is the number one architecture department in the country. So consider the acceptance rate, how your GPA and grades fare, the intensity of the major. I also want to bring the conversation back to the early decision to discussion here. So when we look at the universities on the right, we see that their regular acceptance rate is very close to their overall acceptance rate. Meanwhile, their early acceptance rate is 3 to 5 times fold. So when we look at Columbia, students who applied by the November 1st deadline had a 15% acceptance rate. Meanwhile, students who applied later by January 1st had a 3% acceptance rate. That is 5 times more likely to get in when you apply early. So these universities actually don't have an early decision to program, as far as I know. But there are many universities, such as Tufts, such as Boston College, that have early decision to deadlines that you can take advantage of and then get access to these higher acceptance rates. So these are some of the most selective universities in the US. I am showing this list not to tell you that, you should be aiming only for these, but that these universities are only 20. They might not be the perfect fit for you. If you are a student who wants to study business management in undergraduates, none of the universities that you see in the top 5 will actually be a good choice for you because they do not have business courses available for students. So I would highly recommend you to look at the university rankings as a way to get inspired, but not necessarily to limit your search. Okay, so with the competition and admission odds, we have the highly selective ones. These are many Ivies, such as Harvard, Yale, some Ivy Plus, such as MIT, Stanford. These will always be reach universities, even if you are full GCSE 9 and quadruple A stars, valedictorian kind of a student. Instead of calling them highly selective at this point, we are calling them highly rejected because at the end of the day, it is very, very difficult to get into them. And then we have selective universities. So these are universities in the 10 to 25% acceptance rate range. They include BU, NYU, Georgia Tech, University of Southern California, Northeastern by program. They can be a reach or a high match depending on your profile and your major. We have the moderately selective ones, many strong selective, many strong flagships and privates. So University of Maryland, UMass Amherst, U Miami. For a solid profile, these will be match universities. And then we also have the less selective universities, but those that are still serious. So these include a wide range of state universities and regional private universities. They often might give you significant merit aid given that they are not as selective. And then for a strong academic profile, these become either likely universities or safeties, or even financial safeties, those where you will be the big fish in the small pond, and then they will probably offer you financial aid to go there. So now that we have looked at all of these different ways to make your list smaller, let's go back to our case study, Gabriella, and then see what she's doing with this long list of hers. So I'm going to explain some of the reasons why Gabriella took these universities out of her list, and I will also ask Aayzah to tell me what she thinks about those decisions, whether she agrees or whether she would have made different decisions. So the student took UCLA out of her list in the UC applications because they think UCLA is too difficult for them to get in. They instead kept UC San Diego and UC Santa Barbara. Then we have UC Berkeley, which is actually just as difficult as UCLA to get into, but it is one of the students' dream schools. So they decided to still, shoot their shot with UC Berkeley because it is just the university that they really, really want to. They took Colby out of the running because they said they prefer a more urban location. They kept Boston College. They took out Boston University because they think it is really selective and they might not have a good shot. But they kept Tufts on their list for a similar reason as Berkeley. Although Tufts is actually more difficult than Boston University to get into, it is also one of the students' dream schools, and they do want to apply there. They want to be able to say that, I at least sent an application. Columbia was the students' long time, dream university since actually they were a child, but being realistic and talking to their advisor, they are realizing that with their academic achievements and with their profile, Columbia is very unlikely. They are applying to Northeastern. They took out George Washington University because they think the psychology program is not really up to their standards. They took out Wellesley because although they really like the university, they said they want to be in a more urban location, and Wellesley is a little bit outside of Boston. Bates went out for the same reason. Barnard is an interesting choice here because the student, as you see from Wellesley and Barnard, which are both women's colleges, she has been considering women's colleges. And Barnard is closely affiliated with Columbia University. In fact, most of the classes are taught at Columbia. So the student thinks Barnard might be their way of actually increasing their chances at getting into a Columbia education. And then they also kept Pepperdine, Southern Methodist, Wesleyan, and American University. Wesleyan is a notable choice here because it's a small liberal arts college, but it does have one of the leading psychology programs in the country. So the psychology program is actually really, really selective. And as you hear from some of the other, choices, the student wants the psychology department to be strong at the university. So Aayzah, what are your thoughts?
I think that Gabriella has been smart in listening to her advisor. I agree with some of the choices that she's actually most of the choices that she has made. So I especially think like taking a Columbia but keeping in Barnard is like a really smart strategy. I mean, as you said, you take a lot of classes there, you graduate in the same robes, and you get ex that urban experience and like the opportunities available to you from New York as a city are still going to be available. Um, I think that if she wanted, she could have added like NYU as well, just for that same like reason.
Mhm.
Um, what I also like is that, I mean, I guess she kind of took out like her liberal arts options, but I feel like she could have had like some of those simply because like not that many liberal arts get like a lot of UK applicants. So I think it's like a good strategy to like kind of go down that route. And they have some really good, strong like consortiums as well as pathways to like for example like she's in psychology but like if you're interested in engineering for example they have like pathways where you can then later like transfer to Celtic for example or even do like a 4+1 with like a leading university so she could have done that and then I think like she could have kept UCLA just because like she doesn't have to do any extra applications for
Mhm.
that so why not, you know? And it's also once again like in the middle of LA, like why not? Um, and then I think it's good to keep something like Northeastern, for example, which the reason why Northeastern ha is so selective is because it's so easy to apply to. They don't have
Mhm.
a supplemental essay requirement, they're test optional, and kind of really are just optional, more so than a lot of other universities. So like it's nice to have some options like that where you're like, okay, fine, I'm gonna apply here just because it's like supremely
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. First of all, context for the UCLA, University of California system, you prepare one application and then you get to apply to four universities. So the student did not have to take UCLA, but they could have replaced UCLA with another University of California option because right now they have three, Santa Barbara, Berkeley, and San Diego. So they could have added one more here. I also really agree with the liberal arts point. The student did take out their liberal arts options, Colby, Bates, and Wellesley, mainly because of location, but also if that's a really important factor for the student, there are still liberal arts universities in more urban locations that they could have applied to. I think we only have Barnard and Wesleyan left here, in fact. Um, so she has, let's see how many universities left. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. So now, of these 14 universities, let's look at how we would classify them based on the reach target safety clustering we talked about. So, starting with reach, um, Tufts, Barnard's, Berkeley, and Boston College would be reach here. These are universities that are very selective. The student, I would say, is within the acceptance rates within them, but not necessarily in the top quartiles. If they were to get in, they would probably be lower down in the application pool. So they are reach. I also want to highlight that the student actually decided to apply early decision two to Boston College, which I think is a very smart option because early decision two increases your chances of getting into the university. Um, so choosing that for one of your reach universities will almost make your reach university feel more like a target university for you. So it will push it to a more manageable pool. Um, and then looking at the targets, we have Northeastern, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Wesleyan, and Southern Methodist. And then for safeties, we have Pepperdine, Loyola Marymount, Santa Clara, American University, and Rutgers. Um, One thing to note here with early decision two is that when you make an early decision application, and if that university accepts you, you are not really allowed to go to another university in the US because you made a binding decision. There's also early action, which is basically applying early but not having the binding aspect of your decision. So let's also keep that in mind. The student, by applying early decision, basically said, if I get into Boston College, it really doesn't matter what the other schools say. Aayzah, what do you think about the classifications? Would you move any university from one area to another?
No, I think that it makes sense to put them as they are. I would say like AU could move into Target as well. It really depends on her essays as well and like how she frames her activities and how she's able to like really align herself like with the college, which
Hmm.
like AU being a bit more like poli science leaning or international relations leaning. I'm just wondering how she would do
Hmm.
that. But the rest I agree with. I really do appreciate the fact that she chose to go down the ED2 route. I think that's like probably the smartest decision that she took. I think oftentimes students want to know the difference between doing early action two or ED2 at, for example, like an institution like U Chicago. And it's important to understand that like early decision, just because of that binding nature, number one, shows your commitment to the school. And number two, like allows them to like protect their yield, which is like how many students will actually attend from the students that they accept, which is a factor that goes into like college rankings, etc. So whenever you can give a college that like commitment, that is going to woo them over like
Hmm.
more easily.
Perfect. Yes. Lovely. So now let's see what are the results. These animations happened automatically. I'm very happy with how they turned out. So the results, the students, Gabriella got 6 acceptances, which is a very good rate out of the 14 applications that they have sent. But when you see the movement here, a lot of their acceptances actually came from her safety universities, 4 of them. So she did get into Boston College, early decision too, which means based on some of the conversations with financial aid, of course, it's very likely that she will be attending Boston College. One of the only reasons why you are allowed to kind of break the early decision contract is if you do not get the financial aid package that you wanted, because the university cannot really make you go there if they're not making it affordable for you. But she also got into UC San Diego, Santa Clara, Loyola Marymount, Rutgers, and Pepperdine. She got waitlisted at Barnard and Southern Methodist and Wesleyan. The sad truth about this is that, Barnard was another Reach University for the student, and Wesleyan, she applied mainly because, the psychology program is really strong. She actually might have chosen either one of these universities, perhaps over Boston College, but the early decision, too, again, is a limiting factor there. And then she did get outright rejected from Santa Barbara, Northeastern, Tufts, AU, and Berkeley. Um, I mean, Aayzah, we can't really have opinions about what the universities have decided. But like given the results that she has gotten, do you think applying to ED2 was the right choice?
I think so. I mean, if she really wanted, I guess she could have done Barnard ED2 as well. But I mean, I think with these, it's like it's so holistic, it's so subjective. You never really know someone's like decision, like what went in their decision. Like it took Umut so long to get through all the factors.
Hmm.
So I think like Boston College will be like a good fit for her based on
Hmm.
her interests. And yeah, I think that's good. I think maybe up so with the wait list is interesting because like I guess she's now that she's ED2, she can't do anything about it. But just for you all to know, if you are waitlisted, you can still show your interest in a school and you can send them a continued letter of interest, let them know
Hmm.
like what you've done since you applied, how to boost, like how you boosted your profile, as well as like how you're still interested. Um, and then I feel like maybe she was rejected from SMU because they think she won't attend because it was her safety. And sometimes colleges can reject you that you think you'd easily get in. And that's because they think you're like not going to go. And so maybe them
Hmm.
placing her on the wait list is to see if she's still interested. So that's just interesting to know.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think the rejections make sense. I feel like Santa Barbara could have gone either ways. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we very often see students who get into really competitive universities, but then get rejected from much
Yeah.
less selective universities because those universities sometimes can also tell that they are the safety option.
Hmm.
As one of my singers said, make them feel like the only girl in the world so that they will go and accept you.
Yeah, for real.
So,
Uh,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to the director of admissions at Emory the other day, and I think he said something about how admissions officers are like matchmakers. So that's
Mhm.
really like you really do need to make them feel special. And also, ultimately, they're recruiting for their school, and like academics and profile aside, at the end of the day, like if you don't pass the vibe check, then for America, you don't pass the vibe check.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Then congrats to Gabriela for going to Boston College, one of the top universities in the US. I believe acceptance rate of 12%. Big research university, end of the Green Line in the Boston metro, so you can easily get to the city, which seemed to be an important decision maker for Gabriela. Also strong in the psychology department. So now we have some time for your questions. Before we go ahead with questions, you can scan this QR code to book a free 30-minute call with one of our consultants for attending this presentation. So we will offer that to you as a token of our appreciation. You can ask about, questions that are specific to your student's case or any of the support that you might need from us at A-List through that call. But we also have some time here to answer your questions. So Aayzah and I are both here, and you can write them in the chat if you have any questions, or unmute yourself if you can.
I think we have one question. Um, it says like, what's the difference between ED1 and ED2? So that is simply a matter of time. So ED1 applications are also binding. You apply earlier. So most of those applications have to be submitted by November 1st or November 15th, and you hear back around mid-December. And then ED2, less schools offer ED2, but it is also binding and it does increase your chances more than applying RD or early action. But these, as Umut mentioned before, have deadlines mid-December or Jan at the same time as regular decisions applications are due.
Aayzah, I cannot see the questions, so if you could read them as they come.
Um, I think the same person's asking follow-up. Can you apply to more than one early action? Yes, you can. You can apply to more than one early action. Um, It depends on what you want. It's not binding at all. You can also apply to early action and early decision, but just know that if you apply early decision and you get in, you have to withdraw all of your other applications before you even find out if you got in or not.
Mm, yeah, correct.
But I will say for early decision this year for international students, I think that schools might be a bit more understanding given the political climate. If there's any issues around visas for international students, that they are willing to be lenient with the early decision agreement. So it's not to say that one should go around to abuse that leniency, but to know that if you're worried that if you sign that early decision agreement or early decision to agreement at this point, and then if you don't get an appointment, or what would you do, right? So like they're willing to let you kind of be a bit more flexible. Um, but not more than one ED1 or ED2. No, you can only apply to one.
Well, if you get a rejection from your ED1, then you can go and apply to an ED2, right, Aayzah?
Yes, you can.
Do we have any other questions?
I think that's all that I can see in the chat. If anyone wants to just directly ask, you can always unmute yourself as well.
And if you don't have any more questions, again, you can always ask your questions using this QR code. You can also just contact us at this email address or call us. We are very available through different platforms. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we do a series of these webinars. Uh, Different members of our advising staff actually talk about these different things to give you their different perspectives and experiences. So also stay tuned for more emails because after New Year's we will have a series of other topics that will be quite relevant to your application journeys. So thank you very much for joining us. Bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.